I think any act of kindness is peacemaking. When I'm kind on a bus to a person sitting next to me, giving space, it's a peacemaking for me. Any act of kindness from the heart, any act of being authentic with yourself is a peacemaking because it gives permission to the others to be authentic. Any act of courage in a places where it's risky to be courageous is peacemaking. My name is Ada Hagobian, and I'm 41 years old, a mother of two young children. And yes, I have been growing up in Armenia. I was born in Armenia and spent my childhood and youth there. And I think it has shaped my life and my profession, my engagement in life, and also how I see the world somehow is part of it, from how the childhood was for me and how I was growing up in Armenia. I was 6 years when the war started, the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia around the Nagorno-Karabakh enclave, which was disputed who it belongs to. Just to give a short version, what is it about? During the Soviet time, they decided that this part, which is called Nagorno-Karabakh, which was inhabited by Armenians, was given to belong to Azerbaijan. And this was not a solution that the people really in Armenia liked. And there were many ways, attempts to get it back, but during the Soviet time, it was impossible to fight for it, though they were making claims around it. And so the breakdown of the Soviet Union, the system that was holding everything together as a status quo, reduced its influence, and it was the time that the war broke out around this area. So the war was escalating, and I don't really know who told me there was a war. It was TV or the people talking around. But children are very curious, and they hear the parents talk, probably. Like we think that the children are just playing, but they capture everything. I know that from my kids. And probably I have been hearing the parents' conversations, the adults' conversations, and also one very major thing that I knew that it's real and what the consequences of it is, that we're living on a ground floor on the central street. I come from a small city, so we have one central street, and we were just there on the ground floor with the windows looking to the street. And almost every day there were ceremonies of when the soldiers were killed. They were taking them for burial, like it was a ceremony when the coffins were transported through this street, like walking, not with cars, but walking. And I could see it all, and I could see that the people are dying. And so the situation was not only influenced by the war itself, but the whole political, economical context changed. And it means that there was an economic crisis, the whole system was changing, the unemployment rate, there was no proper infrastructure, civil infrastructure. Like for years we had no heating, we had very little electricity, and there was a shortage of food, and this was all, I think, influenced me how I sometimes don't take things for granted. Like I appreciate that there is heating, there is electricity, and that you have a choice of food. And I think it's a good thing. I think my curiosity to go deeper down, to understand conflicts and to study and explore conflicts comes from the experience that when the war and conflict was going on in my country, it was not really talked about much. So somehow it was like a background feeling something is going on. We knew what was going on, but like there was no culture of the parent is talking to a child like this is what is going on, and it was mystified somehow, the war, that we are the right ones, we are defending our land, our people, but it was not very deep, and it was not very satisfactory for me. So when I grew up and I had a chance, I understood I want to understand it deeper. I really want to explore it, why it happened, what alternatives were there, because it cannot be that it's only one way, that you have to fight or you have to go to war. I think it was somehow the mystery I want to explore. What were the factors that pushed us to go there, to kill each other? Because like in each conflict, it happens mostly with the neighbors, with the people you interact, and one day you get up and you start fighting, you start killing each other. So what is it that actually drives us to that extreme? So these were the questions I was ready to explore in my master studies, that when I came to Germany to do, and I wrote my master thesis on psychopolitical causes of war, of Nagorno-Karabakh, as a case example. I was not wanting just to analyze the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, but I wanted to analyze these factors, the psychopolitical factors that drive us to war. And I took a case study of Nagorno-Karabakh because it was my interest to explore my war and my wounds first. I think it was 2006 when I had a chance to present my master thesis to a large amount of scholars in Germany. It was a conference, I think it was in Trier. And when I presented to a group of people who were Azerbaijani people, Armenian students, scholars, and it was not perceived well. I was threatened that I'm a traitor, that I'm doing something against Armenians. I'm not a proper Armenian. I should never return to back to Armenia because I did my master studies in Germany, and it was a dramatic pushback for me because I was thinking I'm actually helping us to understand what is happening. It's actually I'm trying to bring a new lens. We are all scholars. We should not just repeat what the politics is saying. We should explore more and find out more, and this will help us to look at the solutions in a larger perspective, not very narrow-minded. But it was not accepted well, and it gave me a lot of pain, because then I understood even small step away from a official political standpoint. If you make one step away, you are already considered a traitor. So there is no spectrum of broadening our views. It's very, very limiting. Since 2019, I started as a project manager with a Forum Civil Peace Service in Odessa, in Ukraine, and I have been supporting the partner organizations there. Since the war broke out in 2022, we have been evacuated, and since then I'm working from Germany, but supporting the partners, and we have even got new partners within this time. What I can say we are trying to establish is to support, to create these trustful spaces where people can be accepted with differences. Then we are not seeking for one truth, but we are able to accept the multiple realities of the people, because each of us comes with our own baggage, our own wounds, our own experiences, and we can have very different views on some things, and not to fight your view, but to sit and listen to you and to try to understand where your view comes from. And when I have that empathy and compassion towards you, to understand your story, your truth, then I'm not again trying to fight it, but this coexist in the same space. And I've been working with different partners, supporting them, creating spaces where they can build this trust among each other and talk about difficult topics, inner tensions in the society. And these are organizations that work, for example, through the methods of creative arts, theater, and some partner organizations work in the neighborhoods, and some work with elderly people. One of our partner organizations, or the areas that we work, is playback theater. And what is playback theater? It's an improvisation theater that doesn't come and tell their story or prepared piece of art to the audience, but the audience is actually taking part in the performance in a way that the performers are playing the stories of the audience. So you can come to the playback performance and tell your story, and each performance has a theme, and also we choose like themes that are relevant for the society, that are boiling up, that people need to talk about it. And what is the principles of that is that when you tell your story, you it has a healing effect because you get other people to be part of it. You are not carrying that burden alone, but other people witness you and your pain and your joy and your happiness and your maybe dilemmas and conflicts, everything what is in that story. Through shared witnessing of your story happens also healing for the others, but because your story also becomes the story of them, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I relate to it. It happened to me as well. Yes, I feel empathy." Even if people that from a different perspective, they can understand, oh, okay, when I encounter this and this, it can mean that this person has this experience. Interesting. And it helps also, that's why, because it becomes shared, it helps community building and solidarity. So we support this kind of theaters to grow and perform, and more stories are being told, especially now when it is wartime. A lot of emotions, a lot of stories are coming up, and when we give that space for the people to tell the stories, it creates that this collective healing environment. I just had a conversation with a partner, and they asked me, "What do you mean by peace building? Is it peace between us and Putin, or it's something different?" I said, for me, it's something different. Because we are not working on the mediation on a highest political level. We cannot influence there. But for me, peace is when we are able to create relations between each other in the communities, between the communities, that there is free of discrimination, and it allows the other people, everybody, feel free and authentic, so that I'm not afraid to be who I am. Then, and you are able to accept me how I am. And then I find that this is a peaceful society. So this is peace for me. But a lot of things trigger us that we react maybe aggressively. For example, in our neighborhood project, we work with 20 different clusters. The clusters are like a combination of many buildings that have a yard, and so they are neighborhoods like this. And there are about like 2,000 people who live in these yards, and we are working with the leaders of these yards who are trying to bring neighborhood principles that can actually create such an atmosphere. And in the wartime, a lot of things come up that causes turbulences. For example, they are doing some projects together, and for example, they decided to collect some books to send to the library in Leipzig, because the refugees now don't have the books in their own languages to read. As if it's very simple project, no conflict should arise, the neighbors are collecting books. And then it came like, in which language should the books be collected? Ukrainian or Russian as well? Or only Ukrainian? And people react very emotionally to it. And then what our partners do, they say, okay, let's meet and talk about it. And they had a group meeting about this issue of the language, and everybody was given a chance to say what it means to you, how it connects to your story. Why is it uncomfortable for you, this or that? What do you think about it? And with 20 people, it lasted 4 hours. And after that, each of the people in the group knew the personal stories of each of them, how they relate to the different languages. And then it was not a matter of fighting for the right or language, or fighting for which is the official language, but it was more human connection at the end. And it means that through this kind of circles, we support not just to solve this problem among 20 people. It gives them the opportunity to experience that you can talk about difficult topics in a constructive manner, and to develop empathy to each other. And they can take this experience and the skills and use it with the people, the 100 people that live in their building. I brought some shells. They come from the Atlantic Ocean, from Ghana, and I had a chance to live there for 5 months in a small fisherman community, and build this relation with the nature, with the ocean, with the sea, with different mentalities, with different people, and feel connected. And I feel like these shells can tell a huge story, can tell a wisdom of life, because the ocean has been there ever before us people. And when we appreciate the small beauties of the ocean, and take it as a living being, like the Ghanaians, the fisher people community, they treated the ocean as a living being. They were talking about it like the sea doesn't like when you swim when it is dark, and you are not allowed to put bright lights facing towards the sea. The sea needs its resting time, and there is so much wisdom in it. Because you might think, these people just talk something, but it means in the sea there are so many living beings. If you put light, you are disturbing them actually. And when we start not judging like, what they know, or like what sounds strange to us, that we don't like label it like this or that, but try to sink in what it means. There is so much wisdom, and if we are open to it, I think we can improve our relation to everything and everybody, and bring a real peace. What one needs to be a good peace builder is a good question, actually, because I ask that question to me: what do I need to have and bring in to be impactful in a positive way? And I think the two things that I think are fundamental to have is open heart and open mind. Open heart, because you need to empathize, to have an empathy with the people who you work with. Doesn't matter whether you agree with them, you don't agree with them, you need to have that open heart to connect to people. And open mind, because you are coming with your stance and your opinions and your experiences, and people are coming from different place in their life, and you need to have an open mind to hear them, to to be able to broaden your mind, to hear their story, their opinions, why they are thinking like that, why they are feeling like that, to be able to support them. Without these two, you cannot engage in any peace building. I think these are the two major aspects, other than technical skills in a different peace building methods, that you need to learn, and you can learn, you go to trainings, but these two things, and maybe a third one I will add, which is very not easy to have, and it's never complete, but you need to have inner peace. If everything is boiling in you, you are not done with your own problems, you are like fire within, you cannot be available to the other. And it's a continuous work on yourself to be more peaceful each day within you, to be more available for the others. And I think everybody can be a peace builder in everyday action. It doesn't matter whether you are actively involved as a profession, peace building as a profession, but everybody can contribute to more peaceful societies in the world. And I will have the message, it's your choice. Every day you step out from your apartment, or you enter your apartment, your family, every second you have that choice that you can make. And nobody can stop you from it.